Hashtag the day the Council saw humanity's predator instincts unleashed. The Galactic Council's massive chamber hummed with the quiet conversations of 1,000 different species. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the human delegation section, her fingers drumming nervously against the polished metal table. Around her, beings from across the galaxy discussed trade routes, territorial disputes, and scientific exchanges with the casual ease of those who had been doing this for centuries. The humans had only been part of the Council for 3 standard years. They were still the newcomers, still the curious little species that had somehow managed to stumble into faster-than-light travel without destroying themselves. Most of the other species looked at humans the way adults might look at particularly clever children who had figured out how to work the door locks. The matter of the Kepler 442 mining rights will now be addressed, announced Councillor Thexai, the current session leader. The tall, crystalline being's voice resonated through the chamber's translation systems, reaching every delegate in their native language. Sarah straightened in her seat. This was why she was here. Kepler 442b had been discovered by human deep space explorers 6 months ago. The planet was rich in rare earth metals that humanity desperately needed for their expanding space program. But 3 other species had also laid claim to the system, citing various ancient laws and precedents that predated human membership in the Council. The Zephyrian Collective presents their claim first, Thexai continued. Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrians rose gracefully. His people were known throughout the galaxy as master diplomats and traders. Tall, with flowing silver skin and multiple arms that moved in hypnotic patterns as he spoke, Veltar commanded attention without effort. Honored councillors, Veltar began, his voice smooth as silk. The Zephyrian Collective's claim to the Kepler 442 system is founded on the ancient right of stellar proximity. Our nearest colony world lies only 47 light-years from this system. We have maintained peaceful expansion protocols for over 2 millennia, and this system falls within our traditional sphere of influence. Murmurs of agreement rippled through several sections of the chamber. The right of stellar proximity was one of the oldest laws in galactic civilization, established long before humans had even developed agriculture. Next came the hegemony representative, a massive creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a rhinoceros. The hegemony's claim supersedes all others, he rumbled, his voice causing small vibrations in the floor. Our deep space sensors detected valuable metals in the Kepler system over 100 standard years ago. We have documented proof of our initial survey missions. The third claimant was the Ethereal Consortium, represented by a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering field. When it spoke, the words seemed to come from everywhere at once. The Consortium disputes these crude material claims. We seek the system for its unique gravitational properties, which are essential for our research into dimensional physics. Science must take precedence over mere resource extraction. Finally, all eyes turned to Sarah. She stood slowly, feeling the weight of thousands of gazes upon her. In the 3 years since humanity had joined the Council, they had never directly challenged the claims of more established species. They had been content to trade for what they needed, to accept minor concessions, to play the role of grateful junior partners. Honored councillors, Sarah began, her voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through her. Humanity appreciates the opportunity to address this assembly. We understand that we are the newest members of this great alliance, and we have always respected the wisdom and experience of our fellow species. She paused, noting the slight relaxation in posture among many delegates. They expected another graceful withdrawal, another human concession to galactic tradition. However, Sarah continued, and the words seemed to hang in the air like a weapon, humanity cannot and will not yield our rightful claim to the Kepler 442 system. The chamber fell silent. Even the ambient hum of the life support systems seemed to quiet. The human claim is simple and unassailable, Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. We found it. We explored it. We planted our flag there first. Every day that this council debates ancient laws and precedents, human miners and engineers are working on Kepler 442b, extracting resources that are desperately needed for our expansion into space. Councillor Thexai's crystalline form flickered with what Sarah had learned to recognize as surprise. Ambassador Chen, surely you understand that possession alone does not constitute a legal claim under council law. The procedures for, with respect, Counselor, Sarah interrupted, causing gasps throughout the chamber. Those procedures were written by species who had the luxury of time and established territories. Humanity doesn't have that luxury. We have one world, overcrowded and running out of resources. We need those metals to build the ships and habitats that will ensure our species' survival. Veltar's multiple arms waved in what Sarah recognized as the Zephyrian equivalent of laughter. The humans are passionate, but passion does not override millennia of established law. Perhaps a suitable compensation could be arranged. No. Sarah's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. There will be no compensation. There will be no sharing arrangements. There will be no gradual transition of control. Kepler 442b belongs to humanity, and we will defend that claim with everything we have. The silence that followed was different from before. Where there had been surprise, there was now something else. Sarah could see it in the subtle changes of posture, the slight backwards lean of several delegates. For the first time since humanity had joined the council, the other species were looking at humans not as clever children, but as something potentially dangerous. Ambassador Veltar's silver skin had taken on a slightly darker hue. Surely Ambassador Chen misspoke. Humanity would not seriously consider using force to defend an illegal claim? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Humanity has been using force to defend what we consider ours for our entire history. We didn't stop being human when we joined this council. The hegemony representative's massive form shifted forward. You speak of force, little human. Your species has perhaps 50 ships capable of interstellar travel. The hegemony alone commands 10,000. Then, I suppose you'll need every one of them, Sarah replied without blinking. Something passed through the chamber then, a current of unease that touched every species present. The humans had always been polite, accommodating, eager to fit in. This was something new. This was something that reminded the older species of uncomfortable truths they had chosen to forget. Every civilization in the galaxy had once been predators. Every species had clawed their way up from primitive beginnings, had fought and killed and conquered to reach the stars. But that was ancient history. Galactic civilization was built on cooperation, on negotiation, on the careful balance of laws and treaties that prevented the kind of conflicts that had once devastated entire star systems. Humanity, it seemed, had not yet learned to forget their predator past. Counselor Thexhai attempted to restore order. Perhaps a recess would be appropriate. Time for all parties to consider their positions, and there's nothing to consider, Sarah said. Humanity's position is clear. We found Kepler 442b. We claimed it. We're mining it. Anyone who wants to take it from us is welcome to try. She sat down, her message delivered. Around the chamber, 1,000 different species suddenly found themselves remembering why their ancestors had developed weapons before they had developed faster-than-light travel. The recess was called, but Sarah remained in her seat as delegates filed out in small groups, their conversations animated and concerned. She could feel the change in the air, the shift in how every other species now looked at humanity. They had come to the council as supplicants, as the grateful new members seeking acceptance. They were leaving this session as something else entirely. Something that would make the older civilizations remember that the universe was not always a safe and civilized place. As the chamber emptied, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The council was about to learn what humans had always known, that sometimes the only way to be heard is to bare your teeth and remind everyone that you still had them. The day the council saw humanity's predator instincts unleashed. Second part, the private quarters assigned to the human delegation felt smaller than usual as Sarah Chin paced back and forth across the metallic floor. Her communication device had been buzzing constantly for the past 6 hours since the council session ended, but she ignored it. She knew what the messages would say. Earth Command was probably having collective heart attacks over her confrontational stance. A soft chime indicated someone requesting entry. Sarah glanced at the door scanner and sighed. It was Dr. Marcus Webb, the delegation's chief science advisor and the closest thing she had to a friend among the diplomatic corps. "Come in, Marcus," she called. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, and Dr. Webb entered, his usually neat appearance disheveled. His graying hair was mussed, and his diplomatic uniform was wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Sarah, what the hell were you thinking?" he demanded without preamble. "I've got 17 different species demanding explanations, Earth Command is threatening to recall the entire delegation, and half the council is talking about imposing sanctions on human space." Sarah stopped pacing and turned to face him. "I was thinking about survival, Marcus." "Our survival? By threatening war with civilizations that have been spacefaring since before our ancestors crawled out of the ocean?" Webb slumped into a chair that adjusted itself to accommodate his human physiology. "Sarah, the Zephyrians alone have enough firepower to turn Earth into an asteroid field." "No, they don't." Sarah's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "Because if they did that, they'd have to explain to their own people why they committed genocide over a mining dispute. These civilizations have spent thousands of years building their peaceful image. They've forgotten how to fight because they've convinced themselves that fighting is beneath them." Webb stared at her. "You're gambling with the entire human race based on the assumption that aliens have become too civilized to defend themselves?" "I'm gambling on the fact that we haven't become too civilized to defend ourselves." Sarah moved to the viewport and looked out at the massive council station orbiting the neutral world of Sanctuary. "Marcus, in the 3 years we've been here, what have we accomplished? We've been grateful for scraps. We've accepted junior partnerships in ventures that were once purely human endeavors. We've let them treat us like children who need to be taught proper galactic manners. Because we are children compared to them." Webb's frustration was evident. The youngest council species has been spacefaring for over 800 years. The Zephyrians have had interstellar trade routes since before humans developed written language. Sarah turned from the viewport, and Webb was surprised by the intensity in her eyes. "And yet, Marcus, which species discovered Kepler 442b? Which species figured out how to build a mining operation on a world with gravity 3 times Earth normal and an atmosphere that would dissolve most known metals? We got lucky, we got innovative. We got creative. We approached problems in ways that never occurred to species who had been following the same procedures for millennia." Sarah walked over and sat across from Webb. "Do you know what Captain Rodriguez told me when she reported back from the mining operation?" Webb shook his head. "She said the Kepler system shows signs of ancient surveys. Metal extraction equipment, long since broken down. Analysis suggests it's hegemony technology, probably from their initial survey a century ago. They found the same deposits we did, Marcus. But they couldn't figure out how to extract them safely." Webb's eyes widened slightly. "You're saying they gave up?" "I'm saying they followed standard procedures, determined the extraction wasn't cost-effective, and moved on to easier targets." "Humans don't have easier targets. We make the hard targets work because we have to." A new chime sounded, this one with the distinctive 3-tone pattern that indicated an urgent council communication. Sarah activated the comm unit. "Ambassador Chen," came the voice of Counselor Thexai, "the emergency session will convene in 2 hours. All parties involved in the Kepler 442 dispute are required to attend." "Understood, Counselor. We'll be there." The connection closed, and Webb looked at Sarah with concern. "Emergency session? Sarah, what if they've decided to expel humanity from the council?" Sarah stood up and began straightening her uniform. "Then, we'll deal with that too." 2 hours later, the council chamber had a different atmosphere entirely. Where the morning session had been routine, almost sleepy, the emergency session crackled with tension. Delegates huddled in species-specific groups, speaking in hushed tones. Several security details were present, their various forms of armor and weapons creating an ominous backdrop. Sarah entered with the human delegation and immediately noticed that their usual seating section had been moved. Instead of being placed among the junior members, they were now positioned in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the claims disputants. It was either a place of honor or a place where they could be watched by everyone at once. Counselor Thexai called the session to order with a resonant tone that silenced all conversation. This emergency session has been called to address the concerning developments in the Kepler 442 territorial dispute. However, before we proceed with standard arbitration procedures, the Council has received intelligence that fundamentally alters the nature of this discussion. Sarah felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Intelligence? What could they have discovered? The Ethereal Consortium has provided data from their long-range sensors stationed throughout the galaxy. These sensors have detected anomalous activity in the Kepler 442 system over the past 6 months. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing a three-dimensional map of the Kepler system. Tiny icons indicated the positions of various objects and installations. What you see here is not simply a mining operation, HFY continued. Human activity in the Kepler system includes the construction of defensive platforms, weapons emplacements, and what appears to be a permanent military installation on the largest moon of Kepler 442b. Gasps and agitated sounds rose from throughout the chamber. Sarah kept her expression neutral, but inside she was surprised. She hadn't authorized any military construction. Those were supposed to be civilian mining operations. Ambassador Veltar rose from his seat, his silver skin now displaying patterns that Sarah recognized as extreme agitation. Counselors, this confirms our worst fears. The humans have not simply claimed the system, they have fortified it. This is not mining, this is military annexation. The hegemony representative's massive form shifted forward menacingly. Military installations are an act of aggression under Council law. This justifies immediate military response. Sarah stood up slowly, her mind racing. Someone had been building defenses in the Kepler system without her knowledge. Either Earth Command had been lying to her about the nature of their operations, or the mining teams had taken initiative beyond their original orders. Honored counselors, Sarah began, humanity does not deny that defensive installations have been constructed in the Kepler system. The chamber erupted in angry voices from multiple species. HFY's crystalline form flashed bright patterns as he called for order. However, Sarah continued, raising her voice to be heard over the chaos, these installations were constructed for defensive purposes only, in response to aggressive probing by unknown vessels in the system. This was a calculated gamble. Sarah suspected that if humans were building defenses, there had to be a good reason. Unknown vessels? Veltar's voice carried a dangerous edge. Ambassador Chen, are you suggesting that the claims disputants have been conducting military reconnaissance? I'm not suggesting anything, Sarah replied evenly. I'm stating facts. Human mining operations in the Kepler system have been subject to flyby surveillance, sensor probes, and, in 3 documented cases, direct approach by armed vessels of unknown origin. This was pure bluff, but Sarah was banking on the fact that at least one of the claims disputants had been doing exactly what she described. The uncomfortable silence that followed suggested she had hit the mark. The hegemony representative's hostile posture shifted slightly. Reconnaissance is not illegal under Council law. Neither, Sarah said with a cold smile, is defending yourself when unknown armed vessels approach your operations. Counselor HFY intervened before the situation could escalate further. These accusations require investigation. However, the immediate concern is the militarization of a disputed system. Ambassador Chen, the Council demands immediate access to inspect all installations in the Kepler system. Sarah felt the moment crystallize around her. This was the point of no return. She could agree to the inspection, allow Council investigators to examine every human installation, and hope that Earth Command had been smart enough not to build anything truly provocative. Or she could do what every instinct told her to do. No, she said simply. The single word seemed to echo in the sudden silence. No Council inspection teams will be permitted in the Kepler system, Sarah continued. Humanity considers any unauthorized approach to our sovereign territory to be an act of aggression, and we will respond accordingly. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The entire chamber seemed frozen as the implications of her statement sank in. Finally, Veltar spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Sovereign territory? Ambassador, you cannot simply declare a disputed system to be sovereign human territory. Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of species. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "We didn't declare it," she said. "We took it. If you want it back, come and take it from us." The chamber exploded into chaos as representatives from every major galactic power began shouting at once. But, through it all, Sarah remained standing, calm and unmoved. She had just declared humanity's FIRST interstellar war #the day the Council saw humanity's predator instincts unleashed. Third part, the emergency council session had descended into complete chaos. Representatives were shouting across the chamber in dozens of different languages while translation systems struggled to keep up. Security forces from multiple species had activated their weapons systems, creating a forest of energy barriers and targeting arrays throughout the massive space. Ambassador Sarah Chen remained standing at the human delegation's position, an island of calm in the storm she had unleashed. Dr. Webb sat behind her, his face buried in his hands, probably calculating how quickly the human species could be exterminated. "Order! Order!" Counselor Thexai's crystalline form blazed with brilliant light as his voice boomed through the chamber's acoustic systems. "This session will maintain proper decorum or it will be suspended." Gradually, the chaos subsided to a dull roar of angry murmurs. Delegates slowly returned to their seats, but tension crackled through the air like electricity before a storm. "Ambassador Chen," Thexai continued, his voice carrying barely controlled fury, "the implications of your statement cannot be overstated. Are you declaring that humanity intends to secede from the Galactic Council?" Sarah had been expecting this question. Once you backed a predator into a corner, it had only two choices: submit or attack. Humanity had spent 3 years learning to submit. Today, they would remember how to attack. "Counselor Thexai, humanity has no intention of leaving the council," Sarah replied calmly. "We simply refuse to surrender our rightful territory to appease civilizations that have grown comfortable with taking what they want through legal manipulation rather than honest effort." Ambassador Veltar rose gracefully, his multiple arms weaving complex patterns of diplomatic protocol. "Ambassador Chen speaks of rightful territory, but by what right does humanity claim sovereignty over an entire star system? No single species in Council history has ever made such an audacious claim to virgin territory." Sarah turned to face him directly. "By the oldest right in the universe, Ambassador Veltar. The right of those who are willing to take risks, make sacrifices, and fight for what they need to survive." "You speak of primitive concepts," interjected the Ethereal Consortium's energy representative. "Galactic civilization has evolved beyond such crude territorial imperatives." "Has it?" Sarah's voice cut through the chamber like a weapon. "Or have you simply become so comfortable with your established territories that you've forgotten what it means to expand, to grow, to take risks?" She moved away from the human delegations table, walking toward the center of the chamber where the holographic display still showed the Kepler system. Every eye in the chamber followed her. "Let me tell you what humanity discovered in the past 6 months," she continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "We learned that the hegemony surveyed the Kepler system 93 years ago. They identified the same mineral deposits we're now extracting. They had the technology to reach the system, to analyze the resources, to begin extraction operations." She paused next to the holographic display, gesturing to the mining installations marked in blue. "They chose not to because the extraction would have required new techniques, specialized equipment, and significant risk to their personnel. The return on investment didn't meet their established parameters." Angry rumbles emerged from the hegemony delegation, but Sarah continued without pause. "The Zephyrian Collective conducted long-range surveys of the same system 47 years ago. They reached identical conclusions. Advanced civilization, centuries of experience, vast resources at their disposal, and they walked away because the job looked difficult." Ambassador Veltar's silver skin had taken on darker hues. "Prudent resource management is hardly a failing, Ambassador Chen." "You're right," Sarah agreed. "It's not a failing. It's exactly what we expected." The chamber fell silent. Something in Sarah's tone suggested that she was about to reveal something significant. "Humanity has been monitoring Council databases since we joined 3 years ago. We've analyzed resource surveys, expansion patterns, and territorial acquisitions for every major galactic civilization. Do you know what we discovered? She turned to face the assembled delegates, her expression fierce. Every single one of you has become risk-averse to the point of stagnation. The youngest territory claimed by any council species is over 200 years old. The Zephyrian Collective hasn't attempted a challenging mining operation in 3 centuries. The hegemony's last significant expansion ended 400 years ago. The Ethereal Consortium has been studying the same dimensional phenomena for 600 years without any practical applications. Dr. Webb looked up from behind his hands, beginning to understand where Sarah was heading. You've become comfortable, Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. Comfortable with your established territories, your proven technologies, your predictable profits. You've forgotten what made your species great in the first place. Counselor Thexai's crystalline form flickered uncertainly. Ambassador Chen, these are serious accusations. They're not accusations, Sarah interrupted. They're observations. And they explain why humanity is keeping Kepler 442b. The silence stretched as delegates absorbed her words. You see, honored counselors, humanity doesn't have the luxury of being comfortable. We have one world, overcrowded and running out of easily accessible resources. We don't get to walk away from difficult extraction operations because the profit margins look uncertain. We don't have the option of spending centuries debating the safest approach to new territories. Sarah moved back toward the human delegation, but her voice continued to carry throughout the chamber. Humanity needs those resources. More than that, we need the experience of extracting them under difficult conditions. We need to learn how to build installations in hostile environments. We need to develop the technologies and techniques that will let us survive in a universe that isn't designed for our comfort. Ambassador Veltar attempted to regain control of the conversation. These needs, however, understandable, do not supersede established council law. Council law, Sarah cut him off, was written by species who had already secured their territories and their resources. Council law favors those who already have everything they need over those who are still fighting for survival. The hegemony representative's massive form shifted forward aggressively. Are you suggesting that council law is unjust? Sarah met his gaze without flinching. I'm suggesting that council law serves the interests of the established powers at the expense of newer species. And I'm telling you that humanity refuses to be disadvantaged by laws we had no part in writing. This declaration sent new waves of shock through the chamber. Several delegates began speaking urgently into private communication devices. Counselor Thexai made one final attempt at maintaining diplomatic order. Ambassador Chen, if humanity has grievances with council law, there are established procedures for proposing amendments, procedures that require approval from 2/3 of council species, Sarah replied immediately. Procedures that would take decades to complete while humanity's needs become more desperate. Procedures designed to prevent change, not facilitate it. She turned to address the entire chamber one final time. Honored counselors, humanity came to the Galactic Council seeking friendship and cooperation. We hope to learn from your wisdom and contribute our own strengths to the galactic community. But we've learned that this council doesn't want new ideas or different approaches. You want new species to accept their assigned place in an order that benefits those who are already established. The chamber was dead silent now. Every delegate understood that they were witnessing a fundamental shift in galactic politics. Humanity rejects that assigned place, Sarah continued. We will not be the grateful junior partners who accept scraps while more established species claim the best resources. We will not limit our growth to accommodate others' comfort zones. We will not ask permission to ensure our species' survival. Sarah returned to her seat, but remained standing. The Kepler 442 system belongs to humanity because we were willing to do what was necessary to claim it and defend it. If that makes us primitives in your eyes, so be it. But it also makes us the fastest growing, most innovative species in council space. Ambassador Veltar made one last attempt at diplomatic resolution. Ambassador Chen, surely reasonable compromise. The time for compromise passed when you tried to take our world away through legal maneuvering, Sarah replied coldly. humanity has made its position clear. The Kepler system is ours. Anyone who disagrees is welcome to come and discuss it with our defense installations. As if summoned by her words, a new communication alert echoed through the chamber. Counselor Thexhai activated the incoming transmission, and a new holographic display appeared. It showed the outer edge of the Kepler system, where a small fleet of human vessels had just emerged from faster-than-light travel. The ships were immediately identifiable as military vessels, their hulls bristling with weapon systems that no Council species had seen before. "This is Admiral Martinez of the Earth Defense Force," came a voice through the communications system. "Any unauthorized vessels approaching human territory in this system will be considered hostile. We are authorized to use any force necessary to defend human interests." The chamber erupted once again, but this time Sarah smiled. Earth Command had finally stopped trying to fit into the galactic community and started remembering what humanity did best. They adapted. They improvised. They survived. And, when survival was threatened, they fought. The Galactic Council was about to rediscover why predator species had conquered their homeworlds in the first place. They were about to learn that becoming civilized didn't mean becoming toothless. As chaos reigned around her, Saracen sat down and waited for the other species to decide whether they wanted to negotiate with humanity or fight them. Either way, humanity would get what they needed. Because that's what predators did.